with certain parts or how it's going. So welcome to the Harness Your Power workshop, Strap-on Sex 101. The class isn't exclusively focused on any one kind of strap-on sex. I'm hoping to cover a bunch of different bases in the workshop. The workshop is very generously sponsored by Fun Factory. Yay!
Yeah, I'm sorry to introduce myself earlier. I'm Janelle.
Hi! I say we've met at a training, but I think it might have been a while. Am I a padlock?
Been a while, yeah. Very happy we could sponsor.
I might have looked like my female twin self at that time. So I'm Jay. I'm a sex educator here at Pleasure Chest. I'm also the web manager. I've been here since September 2019, so it's been like almost 4 years. Like I said, this is my first workshop back teaching in class, so I'm gonna try to like make eye contact, but I'm so used to just like looking at a tiny little camera on a screen that, like I said, just be a little bit gentle with me, like you would for someone's first time with strap-on play. Yes! Please don't just like go in there. I mean, please also stay through the end of the workshop. There are a couple reasons why, not just because I hope you all get all the info, but are we still doing the in-store? Okay, so it's 15%, right? Mm-hmm. In-store. So after the class, anything you purchase tonight, 15% off. It's not good on any other day. Plus we're gonna do like a trivia giveaway item at the end. It's going to be for the Fun Factory Limboflex Medium, which is a lovely dildo that I will talk about more later. You can pose it, it does cool things. I know, it comes in 3 sizes, but we decided to go with medium because, you know, it's a good size for everyone, hopefully. So please do stay till the end. I believe we also have cards for you to fill out and give feedback. Do your worst, I totally understand. We want all the feedback. If we're not doing something so great, we wanna know. I wanna know anyways. So we will jump into it. Oh yes, okay, so the overview. We're gonna do a little bit of an anatomy lesson first, since this is relevant and applicable, especially when it comes to picking toys and dildos that are going to go in your strap-on setup. We're also going to go over equipment. We're gonna talk about harnesses, of which there are many different kinds. We're gonna talk about dildos. We're gonna talk about materials in terms of what you should maybe look for or not look for in a toy, depending on who you're going to use it with, what hole you're going to use it with, how many people you want to use it with, all that good stuff. We're also going to talk about lots of other things that go with it. Lube. Lube is actually like wildly important. A lot of people overlook lube, but especially for strap-on play, it's pretty necessary, I would say. It's not really the part you want to skimp on. I would say get a beginner harness, but maybe get a nice lube to go with it. We're also going to talk about all the other fun kinds of things you can incorporate into strap-on play. Other kinds of toys, position aids, things of that nature. And then we'll go over more like positions, tips and tricks, things like that. Strap-on sex with gender non-conforming, trans, intersex, and non-binary people. How maybe to approach that, how to do that with care, not to make assumptions about certain things. And then at the end, I've set aside about 30 minutes for Q&A. That might be a little bit too much, but in the past I have left not enough time. I had like 8 minutes at the end. You were like, wait! So I set aside about 30 minutes for Q&A at the end and a trivia question for the giveaway. The trivia question will be, I will ask you a question. Whoever answers it correctly first gets the giveaway. Like I said, it's gonna be the Reflex Medium. And we have visual aids here. So, anatomy. I know it's kind of boring, but it really actually is quite important, especially if you're trying to stimulate certain parts of the body. So we're going to talk about AFAB anatomy and then AMAB anatomy. So in terms of AFAB anatomy, if you're not familiar with the term, that's going to be assigned female at birth. So we're talking about not just cis-fem anatomy, but the anatomy of folks born female on their birth certificate. So up here, thing that lots of people love to talk about is the G-spot. The G-spot is actually kind of harder to stimulate, I think, than some people believe. Then again, there are lots of ways to do it. The kind of classic way that most people talk about is the come hither motion, where you're pressing up towards the belly button, like so, if that makes sense. As I'm trying to like figure out how to demonstrate this best. I'll rotate. Hopefully this gives you an idea, this kind of motion. But that's not the only way stimulated. Also, if you're using toys that have like quite a larger girth, that will just put pressure on it automatically. You don't necessarily need a huge amount of curvature. You don't need a lot of force. Like, this is not a piece of dough that you are working. Like, you do not need to go hard. If you want to, and the person's into that, you can, but you don't necessarily need to apply a ton of force or pressure to it. Some people find that this motion's better. Those are all kind of finger motions. With strap-on sex, you don't have quite as much control because in the cases we're talking about, you're using a toy. It's not an appendage where you can feel your fingers, or if you have a biopenis, what's kind of happening and where you're going. So it's a little bit less aiming, but if you are looking to stimulate the G-spot, there's going to be certain kinds of toys that are going to do that better, certain kinds of toys that are not going to do that as well. We'll talk about that more as we get into the actual dildo part. The other thing we're going to talk about, and unfortunately it's not on my diagram, is going to be the clitoris. That's actually pretty important, I would say, when it comes to strap-on play. A lot of AFAB people will not, cannot, just don't have an orgasm without both. It's not taboo, it's not bad. If somebody's like rubbing their clit while you are having sex with them, it doesn't mean you're doing a bad job. It just means that they might need more. We're also going to talk about toys that can help you do that. There are lots of things that, if you have two hands free, that you can do to yourself if you are the receiving partner, or the strap-E as we'll call it, as opposed to the strap-er. Somebody else wrote a blog on our site and used those terms, and I was like, that's brilliant, I'm stealing that. Thank you, Iona Pearl. So I'm going to say things like strap-E and strapper. I'm also going to use terms like giving partner and receiving partner. I'm going to try to stay away from using terms like top and bottom or dom and sub, because just because you're engaging in strap-on play doesn't mean you have a DS dynamic. It doesn't mean one person's dominant and one person's submissive. If you know anything about the term power bottom, or bottoming from the top, there are plenty of terms like that, but I'm going to try to stick to strapper and strappy, or giving and receiving partners. I might say top or bottom just because I'm kind of used to that, but I'm going to try not to. So the G-spot does also have a little bit of a different texture, so if you're trying to figure out where it is on yourself or someone else, before or after strap-on play, just to kind of know where it is, it does have this texture, kind of like the texture of a walnut, or something kind of spongy, but it's distinctly different than the much smoother skin around it in the vaginal canal. It doesn't feel the same. I would say it's about like the size of a quarter. That's what I think it is. It might be, maybe I don't know, maybe I haven't inspected enough other people's bodies, but so I don't want to definitively say like it's this size, but you're not looking for something, you know, like the size of a tennis ball, nor are you looking for something that's like that big. It's like a decent size. Like it's probably about the size of, you know, kind of two fingers, not to be graphic or gauche. But the cool thing is that oh yes, okay. I keep worrying the clicker's not gonna work, sorry. I've never used our setup here before. So on a MAB person, the kind of equivalent homologous structure is going to be the P-spot, which is located inside the rectum. Again, it is going to have kind of a spongier texture. It's definitely different from the much smoother skin around it. Both stimulating either the G-spot or P-spot can lead to orgasm. It doesn't necessarily. Generally, people seem to think it feels good, but always listen to your partner. If they're like, no, it's too much, or no, I don't like that, the most important thing is to listen to your own body, if you're the receiving partner, or if you are the giving partner, to listen to the other person. Just because everybody else likes something doesn't mean it's good. Like, don't we all know this? That new show with The Weeknd, everybody was like, oh my god, it's gonna be amazing. And everybody says it's horrible. I didn't watch it. My coworkers told me. She was like, I watched every episode and I kept hoping it was gonna get better, and I love his music, but the show's bad. Okay, maybe everybody hears the show's bad. But anyways, so the P spot is going to be essentially, I don't want to say the male G spot because I kind of hate that term, but it basically is. It's going to stimulate the same kind of sensation. I know lots of people talk about squirting. Stimulating the G spot is kind of the easiest way to squirt, but again, just because you're stimulating the G spot or the P spot does not mean the person will squirt. It doesn't mean that you will be milking their cock as in like semen's going to come out of the tip of the penis. Like, none of that is inherently indicative of pleasure or what's happening. Some people, especially with squirting, like, you have to be really relaxed. Not just physically, you have to be very mentally relaxed. If you're distracted, if you are thinking about what you need to make for dinner, or what you're supposed to do at work tomorrow, or oh my god, I have to clip my cat's nails, like, you're not gonna squirt. You might not even come. Like, that's just, there's so many factors that go into orgasm, but especially like squirting and cock milking that, again, not necessarily indicators of satisfaction. I mean, it's great to get off and all of that jazz, but same time, not huge. The other two spots that are going to be great to stimulate on an AMAB person are going to be the perineum during strap-on sex. Some people really like their balls played with. Some people like to stroke themselves or have a partner stroking them while they're receiving, if it's an anal situation, which on an AMAB person it typically would be. That's like with a big, asterisk. I don't have enough fingers to make an asterisk. I realized I can only make an X, but you get what I mean. Like on a trans femme person, they may no longer have a penis. So that's going to be kind of a whole other separate part of the presentation conversation that we will talk about. But especially on an AMAB person, there's lots of things you can do. We're not even gonna like talk about, touching nipples and body parts, kind of like waist up. Not too much in this class, but point is, using a vibrator on the perineum, fondling balls, stroking someone or someone using a stroker on themselves. Lots of fun to be had. Any questions on the anatomy before I move on?
A really stupid question.
Okay.
What does the G stand for in G spot?
Grafenberg. It's named for the person who found it. Grafenberg.
Okay.
Grafenberg.
I'm guessing the P stands for prostate.
Prostate. Good question. I'm sorry, I didn't say that. It was on the slide. Bad on me. So the three kind of components that you need for strap-on play is going to obviously be the harness, the toy, the dildo, and the lube. But there are a lot of things that go into picking out each. I remember when I bought my first harness, I didn't know what the fuck I was doing. I came to Pleasure Chest, it was great. This was years before I worked here. But there are a lot of things to keep in mind. You don't have to spend a lot of money on your initial setup, especially if it's something where you're like, I don't know if I like strap-on play. Like, maybe I'm gonna do this once and I'm gonna hate it. Like, you don't wanna blow $200, or maybe you don't have $200 to blow on a full setup. That makes sense. So we tend to tell people to start cheaper. I had a friend who actually was like, I don't know why I bought like a $30 harness at Pleasure Chest, and I went back like 2 months later and bought like the nice leather one. And I was like, because we didn't want you to come back in 2 weeks and be mad that you bought the $200 harness. Actually, we don't have a for 200, but you know what I mean, like 130, 40, 50 for like one of the Aslam leather harnesses. We don't want people to have a bad experience. We don't want someone to go home and be like, well, I used this once and it turns out I hate it and now I'm stuck with it. It's kind of hard to rehome sex toys. So, I mean, if you work in the industry, it's a little bit different maybe. Sometimes your friends will be like, oh, well, that dildo is silicone, you can boil that and I'll take that off your hands. But for the average person, you're not going to be like, who wants my harness? I don't know, maybe you can put that up on Facebook Marketplace, but for most people, that's not going to be the case. So I have some items up here, and we'll kind of talk about what to look for what kind of play you want to do. So first, there's the aesthetic part. There's like the whole femme? Do you want something masc? Do you want something that could kind of go anyway? Then there's the consideration of, are you going to share this partner with a harness? Like if you are in a long-term relationship and you want to buy one harness and both people use it because you're both verse, you both like to switch, there's no definitive top or bottom or giving or receiving partner. Those are all things to think about. Because as sexy as leather is, we love leather. I love leather. As sexy as leather is, it's a porous material. It's a hide. It has holes between the molecules. It's skin. Like, let's be real. It's an animal skin, and realistically, it will hold genetic material and bacteria over time. It does require more care. You can't, take it off and throw it in the wash. That's not a thing unless you don't want to have one for very long. I really don't recommend machine washing your leather. I have done it. It's a bad idea. It's like if something's on its last legs, you just throw it in there. But that's like 10 years down the line. Then there are companies like Aslan that do, I believe Aslan has a lifetime guarantee, meaning the lifetime of the item and or the company. So if a strap breaks, you can send it to them and they will fix it or replace it. So these harnesses are a bit of an investment, but it is important to keep in mind that you're never going to be able to get it as clean as when you took it out of the package. It's just never going to be like that. And unless you're going to wear underwear underneath it, there will be bodily secretions in this area. And it does not matter how careful you are, how good you are about taking a cloth with just like warm water and wiping it down. Leather conditioner for some items, it's a little bit kind of dicey. A lot of leather cleaners now have a lot of additives in them, especially with the colored harnesses. They can start to lift and strip out the dye depending on how the leather's treated. So you do want to bear that in mind. So the great thing about harnesses like the Aslan harness, this is the Jaguar, and then over here we have the Jog. I think this is the Ace, but I'm not sure. This is by Spare Parts. Very similar styles. Waistband, 2 straps in the back, super adjustable. The biggest difference is between these, because both of these are adjustable enough to share them with partners. I believe the Aslan goes up to 44 inches at the waist, and then for the larger size, I think it goes to 56. The Spare Parts is kind of similar in their sizing. They have 2 sizes, A and B. The big difference is that you will be able to throw this in the wash. You will be able to, just at the end of a play session, yank it off, throw it in the hamper, and not really think about it until you do laundry. This one, you don't really want to do that. You don't want things to get crusty and weird and not so much, not so good. So pros to both of these is that they're super adjustable and you can share them with a partner. Another pro to both of these is that it has an open hole in the front here. And then this one does as well. That's a little bit harder to see. This one does have an opening as well. These are great because they give you a bit more versatility. You can use an item that is a quote strapless strap-on, like one of the ones from Fun Factory. This is the Share Light, because you can actually put it through the hole. You can also use a dildo like the Vicskin Mustang Royale that has this bumper pad on the bottom. You can actually feel it. You can use a base cover. This is the one from Vixen 2. Lots of other ones. This is like a grinding pad, alien type situation. It also takes a bullet. And then there's more choices upstairs. I just had to kind of pick. I was like, I can't bring them all down. This one's pretty low key. This is from Banana Pants. I really love this brand. I also really love the Pris toys. I know this kind of stuff isn't for everyone. So you'll only really be able to use an item like that if the harness has a hole in the front, like so. And you'll thread the dildo in from the back. If it is like this one, which is a very cool, very dope harness that can also be worn as a chest harness when you flip it around. As you can see, the base plate here, there's no hole. So no strapless strap on, no base cover, stuff like that is those kind of items just aren't going to work in a harness like this. Same thing with the strap-on knee. I think this harness is actually really dope. It's sheer. This is a French company. They make some really pretty like lingerie style harnesses. This one's a little bit less femme. The other one is lacy that we carry from their underwear styles, but again, it does not have a hole in the center. This one has a thong back, and it also has detachable garters. A couple of the spare parts items also have detachable garters, so if you want to go for that full femme presentation and that kind of stockings, lingerie, I'm a diva in the bedroom look, you can do that with a lot of these harnesses. I believe the spare parts, Sasha and Bella, come with garter straps, as does, this is the Rebel from Strap On Me, the Diva also, the lacy one comes with garters. So those are things to think about in terms of not just the aesthetic, but the usability. Again, throw this in the wash, super fast. You are tired at the end of the night. You don't have to take your harness off and then after play, go stand in the kitchen and wipe it down and then let it air dry and then maybe do some leather conditioner and let that air dry. Like, it's gonna be a process to keep your leather clean. So if you're a leather fetishist or you just really love the look and feel of leather, I do personally, it makes me feel very powerful. It's great, but it's going to just require more care, if that makes sense. The other thing to think about with the underwear styles, like this one, the Rebel, and then this is the Tomboy with one eye as opposed to two eyes. There's another style that's a boxer that has two holes, which is a very cool harness for lots of reasons. I really should have brought it down here, but that's okay. Both of these, all the underwear styles like this are going to be sized. It's like pants. If there's a 1/2 inch or 1 inch difference between you and a partner, you're probably not going to be able to wear the same size. Also, not all cuts are flattering on all bodies. I know because I've tried on a lot of these items. There are some items that I just can't wear. Like one size cuts in so hard on the hip that it's uncomfortable to wear, but the next size up is gapping so badly that if I put a dildo in it literally falls off. I don't want to say what brand or what style because I'm not here to pan anyone, but just, we have demos for people to try on. There's a reason, because you don't want to buy something and then realize you don't feel comfortable in. If you don't feel comfortable in, as in you don't feel good, you don't feel like you look good, you're not gonna have a great time. And if it's literally uncomfortable, like it's too tight, you're gonna be thinking about that half the time. And nobody wants to be like, ooh, I should be engaged with my partner, but really I'm thinking about how it's cutting into my muffin top and it's itching and it's too tight. Nobody wants that. Nor do you want to be sitting there thinking that your whole, rig is gonna come down halfway through. And as the receiving partner, you don't want to be sitting there watching the giving partner and the look in their eyes where you can tell they're distracted. Nobody wants that either, because then you're like, well, the person's not very present. Like, I know that they may not be getting as much sensation as the giving partner, but for me, when I'm the receiving partner, I don't want the giving partner, top, etc., to be, or the strapper to be just checked out. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants either partner to be checked out. It's not gonna be a good time. It's not gonna be a sexy time. It's not gonna be a fun time. Nobody's gonna get off. So it's as important to think about the material, whether or not you're going to share it, what kinds of toys you want to use with it, and also how you feel in it. These are all really important things. If you're looking for like the MVP of usability and versatility, it's probably gonna be this item or something similar, where it's gonna be super adjustable, kind of jock strap, two-strap style that you can throw in the wash. If that's what you're going for. If you're like, nope, it's just for me, pick whatever the fuck you want, at the risk of being crass. If you don't mind, some extra stuff going on with leather. Oh, that was the one I wanted to talk about that I couldn't find the demo for. So we have this other harness called the Body Dock. It's made by Dildo. There's also the King Cock Body Dock. That's a really unusual kind of harness. It has a suction plate. It is probably like, if you're gonna use 2 or 3 dildos in a single session, like you're gonna start with a warm-up one, and then go to like kind of a normal size one, then maybe you wanna do like a large size one. If you're going to wanna switch out dildos quickly, that is going to be the fastest. You're literally just gonna yank one dildo off, put it down, stick the other one on. That is the fastest you can possibly change it. With anything else, you're gonna have to kind of pull it out, put the other one in, like, it's not bad. Same with the O-rings. With these, you can swap out the O-rings. They can take probably up to, I would say, almost like 3 inches in diameter. We don't sell those, nobody does. But you can go to the hardware store and get a rubber pipe fitting that is identical to an O-ring, because it is an O-ring, and put that around the base of the dildo. Just make sure it matches the girth, because if it's too big, if your O-ring is too big, the whole dildo will just slip out, if that makes sense. That's the other consideration I almost forgot to mention. Anything with a built-in O-ring, like these, they do stretch, but they only go up to about, a lot of them say 2 inches. I have not found that entirely to be true, or it's like, it's a lot to try to get a 2-inch wide dildo through some of those holes. Definitely 1.5, 1.75, you maybe jam a 2-inch through. But if you're interested in doing any play with XL toys, an underwear style harness is just not gonna cut it. In fact, most of these harnesses are not gonna cut it. You're gonna have to do a rope harness, or you're gonna have to buy a specialty harness. There's one that's branded with Carmen Rivera's name. She's a porn star. She specializes in like giant cocks, fucking people with giant cocks. So if that's what you or a partner want, you're probably gonna need to buy a specialty harness, because rope harnesses are not the most comfortable. Like, they will work in a pinch, and if you have some tying skills or a partner has some tying skills, you can totally go for it. But if we're getting into the kind of XL category, which we're not gonna talk about too much tonight, you're probably going to need a special harness. So I just want to see where I am on time. So now we're going to talk about dildos. It was kind of hard to choose the order in which I wanted to talk about these, because one will inform the other. Yes.
Quick question.
Yeah.
What would you say is the biggest difference between like the single like midline strap versus the 2 that kind of go around the cheeks? Like, is there any like just one?
I say this is actually a 2-strap harness too.
Oh, okay.
Most of them are. Aslan does make a G-strap version that's a single strap. That's a personal preference thing. Like, as much as I like thongs for underwear, I actually don't find having a leather strap up there particularly comfortable. Other people swear by them and say they're comfortable. It's like underwear preferences. Some people like briefs. Some people hate them. Some people like bikini briefs. They like boy shorts. They like boxer briefs. They like boxers. That's a very personal, like, try it on thing. The 2-strap model, this one is also a 2-strap. That's kind of what I would think of as like a classic harness design. It's gonna be the waistband, a base plate here, and then the 2 straps.
But it doesn't necessarily add like more, I don't know, just like stability, or it's about the same.
I do think that that's something that can vary too. Here, I'm actually gonna go back a slide so I don't know if it'll show. Actually, I think you can kind of see it. So the Terra Firma, which we do have upstairs, I just didn't bring it down, does not have an open base plate, and those straps are a lot thinner than the Aslan ones. It doesn't seem like it makes a big difference, but to me it does. I get very nervous about the level of stability in a harness, so I tend to also wear my straps like the waistband a little bit higher. Some people like it to ride really low. I'd rather just kind of futz around with it until I'm in a place where it feels secure. That is nice about the underwear style ones, like when they fit right, they really are not gonna go anywhere. I've never had any trouble with my leather ones. There's also an Aslan style that has a corset back. That's the one in the picture on the left, the Minx. It has actually quite a wide corset back that laces up. It's a little bit in that kind of like hard leather femme space. It's not super effeminate, but it's one of the more feminine leather harnesses I've seen. I actually own that one in both colors. I really like it, and that was the first leather harness I got because I was really nervous about the stability issue and how it felt to me wearing it. I was like, okay, I don't want to be second guessing anything. I don't want to be freaking out. That, I think, did I answer your question? Okay, it was just like, have I covered that? So I think some of that too is just like a personal preference thing. Like, I know people who have the Aslan, the Jaguar G with a single strap, they're fine with it, they love it. I didn't love it, but I do have this one, I like it, but it's also fabric. It feels more like wearing a fabric underwear thong. Does that make sense? Okay, so dildos. There's so many kinds of dildos. I'm gonna start with the material part. As in, we're kind of just gonna, I say these questions are a little bit out of order, but bear with me. So the material thing, this kind of goes back to the same thing I was talking about with sharing harnesses with partners. You can throw this in the wash. We're not gonna wash it like on the hottest cycle, but it will get clean. And if you're worried about it not getting clean, add some detergent, like on the actual item, like spot detergent, and then throw it in. But the same way you would think about what material you're going to pick for your harness based on whether or not you might be sharing and the porosity of that material, we talk about the same thing with dildos. So a lot of the most, quote, realistic feeling dildos are actually made of proprietary materials like ultra skin and things like that, but basically they're all TPR, TPE, which are thermoplastic rubber, thermoplastic elastomer, sometimes they're silicone, TPR, TPE blend. A lot of the time the packaging doesn't even like say what it is, because they say it's a proprietary material. But ultimately what you want to know about porous materials is they're one person, one hole toys. That is it. You stick that in one person in one hole. If you put it in one person's back hole, you cannot pull it out and then stick it in their front hole, even if you clean it. You will not be able to see the bacteria that may be in the little crevices between the molecules, basically. Porous materials will hold genetic material over time. They will become more porous and actually start to break down over time. The really old ones we have in the store here, they are starting to crack, they're starting to flake and break. If you want something that feels super real and it's just gonna be for one person, one hole, and you want something inexpensive, which these materials are, they're very cost effective, great, go for it. But do keep in mind that you will not be able to sterilize the toy. You will not be able to ever have it as clean as when it came out of the package, which non-porous materials you basically can. So it's just something to think about. You can use an unlubricated condom on porous material dildos or other toys, but it kind of ruins the whole real feel of those materials to begin with. I don't want to say it's pointless. That's up for someone else to decide, the purchaser. I don't personally go in for those materials because I want to be able to use my toys with different partners or myself and a partner. I don't want to think too much about that. So I keep it really simple for myself, and I only go for non-porous materials because that's what I feel comfortable with. Porous materials are more than okay, but it is very, very, very important to not use them with multiple partners, to not put them in multiple holes. Those can lead to bacterial infections, and nobody wants an infection after sexy time. It's just not fun. We're gonna try to avoid that. So we'll kind of move on to the non-porous materials. Glass, silicone, steel, and ABS plastic is technically porous. There's also almost no plastic dildos out there, so we're not going to talk about that much. But the porosity in ABS plastic is very, very, very low, meaning the molecules are very, very, very close together. It is not technically a non-porous material, but most companies kind of treat it and talk about it as if it's non-porous because it functions more like one. On that note, most of the dildos you're going to be looking for, shopping for, etc., I'm assuming are probably either going to be in the porous category of like proprietary materials, elastomer blends, etc., or silicone. There are some cool glass dildos we have upstairs. I've never personally used one in a harness, so I didn't bring those down, but there's a cool line called Icicles that has these silicone bases that I think would be good in a harness. A lot of them also just have flat bases that are harness compatible. There aren't really, I've never seen a steel dildo with the base that could go in a harness. I'm not saying they don't exist, I'm saying I've never seen one. Plus they would be really, really, really heavy, which is part of why I think they don't really exist. Steel toys are great, but we're not gonna talk about those a whole lot. Like I said, I've already made my preference known, but I think it's safer to kind of stick with silicone if you're able to invest, if you want the real feel and you're going to be very careful and vigilant about marking your toys or making sure you don't use them in multiple people, multiple holes, etc. Go for it. So then it kind of comes down to the style of the dildo, whether you are the strapper or the strappy. You can institute a BYOD, bring your own dill policy. But I think it is nice to have options because what if you meet someone and you're out and they want to come over? The likelihood that they have a dildo in their glove compartment's probably pretty low. I could be wrong, but I'm gonna assume that in those kinds of scenarios, you're going to be providing the dildo, whether you're the strapper or the strappy. So there are a lot of factors to consider. There's realistic versus non-realistic. So something like this is one of the shaft dildos. I think this is the B size. I say Ruth knows. I was like, I think this is the B size. I just can't remember if the letters go small to large or large to small. Has some really cool shading on the head of the penis, which I've never seen another company do. Their tones are actually pretty good. Some brands skew kind of like with a weird yellow undertone. Some kind of skew with a weird ashy undertone. You know, that's a personal preference thing. Like there are certain brands that I think do the natural tones better, but it's really what you're comfortable with. If you see a tone and you like it, don't overthink it. But I would say this is really highly representational, highly realistic with the shading, the ridges of skin around the corona, all the veining, the balls, the texture on the balls. I would say this is almost like hyper realistic. And then we have something like the Priss dildo. This is the Talon. This is super non-realistic. I say, don't think, I might pass this one around so you can see the sculpt. I'll actually go ahead and pass both of these around. This does have a bit more of a pronounced head, but I would say this is fantasy colors. It's shimmery. It's got these cool like veins and scales on it. And then there are items that I would call non-representational, like the bouncer from Fun Factory. This to me is not super realistic. There's no veining, there's no balls, there's no pronounced penile head. This one is also really cool. It has balls that literally move back and forth. It's a little bit hard to describe the feeling of it. There's another toy that I'm like, oh, well, if you know this toy, it feels like that. But if you don't, it's not that helpful. It's a cool feeling though. I recently acquired this dildo. I was like, yes, so cool. And then this is the snaky dildo from Strap On Me. Again, sort of similar shape, not representational at all, not realistic colors. The other thing to note about both of those items being passed around, the green one and the Priss one and the shaft one, are that those are both dual density. The bouncer is not dual density, it's mono density. It has these balls in it that move around. I was saying, if you shake it, you'll feel what I mean. And the snaky is also mono density. So the dual density have a firmer inner core and a softer outer core. So if you want a silicone dildo, the closest thing to a real feel is going to be a dual density. They are really nice. The heads do tend to be a little bit softer, so they can be a little bit harder to do G-spot or P-spot play. That said, it kind of depends on how far the firm inner core goes. If it goes kind of all the way through, it still will be pretty firm, but a lot of companies, they kind of leave the heads really soft, so not always is good for G-spot or P-spot stimulation. But what happens if, say, you, the strapper, want something representational? I have had partners who are trans masc. I'm non-binary trans masc myself. And a lot of folks want a dildo that feels like an extension of their own body, which is, you know, it's understandable. They want something pretty realistic. They want something that reflects their own skin tone. That's totally fine. But say you're the receiving partner and you would prefer something like the Pris dildo that's highly non-representational. Maybe the idea of being penetrated by something hyper-realistic is just off-putting to you for whatever reason. There may have to be some kind of compromise, which can be a little bit, you know, uncomfortable, but in those scenarios, it's good to talk about it. You don't want to kind of get to the point of doing strap-on play and realize that you're on two different pages. Something like this could be an option. Pretty representational, but a non-realistic color. For some people, that might be enough. They might be like, oh, just something not skin tone? Okay, I'm fine with that. Somebody else might say the skin tone is fine, but what I really need is something that's distinctly not penile shaped. I don't want something realistic. Those are all deeply personal decisions. For a long time, I didn't like skin tone anything, any kind of sex toys, because I felt like I was making some sort of racial preference, and it made me really uncomfortable because I have partners of different skin tones. I just felt weird about it. It was not for me. But over time, I've become more open to it, especially as the strapper, or if the strappee is really into it. Like, I'm down. Like, I'm a little bit more flexible about, but I'm very picky about which brands, which skin tones, because again, it's just about what feels comfortable for me personally and for the other person. That's just something that you have to figure out for yourself, talk to a partner about. I know that people are like, talking's not that sexy, and I'm like, yeah, but it's way worse when you're in the middle of something and you realize you're not on the same page and suddenly things are going sideways. If you take the time to do the unsexy talking first, then you can jump into play, and those conversations probably won't be happening in the middle of play and things are stopping or slowing down or feeling weird or people are disengaged because you did the quote-unquote unsexy thing first. Okay, firmness. Firmness is actually really important too. Again, it kind of depends on what you're trying to do. As I was saying before, with a lot of the dual density toys, the heads are really soft. They're just not going to be as great if you are specifically trying to do G-spot or P-spot stimulation. So you're probably going to want something that is either monodensity all the way through and pretty firm, or you're going to want to look for something dual density where the core goes higher up and it's not super soft, super squishy head. In general, the firmness thing too, if a dildo is really, really, really squishy, like this one, like the Tantasuka, which I can bend in half and nothing will happen to, I can bend it the other way, this is actually going to be a lot harder to do strap-on play with, especially anal strap-on play. The butt just has a lot more resistance, but in general, something really soft, you will just have more trouble. If you slip out more often, it's going to be a problem trying to get back in. If you're newer, I would say just don't go for anything too soft. If you can smush it in half like this and curl it up, this is probably not a good dildo for a beginner. However, if you're more advanced, or the person you are playing with is more advanced, this might be a great option. It's super non-representational. It is a fun color. It is modeled after the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland. If you were looking for a fantasy dick, but not something that looks like an alien cock or a tentacle, this might be a great option for you. But it might not be a great option for everyone. Uh-oh. That's another thing. Curved or straight up and down. There are some very cool dildos. Uh-oh, where's my purple one? Oh, here we go. There's some very cool dildos like the Limba Flex that you can change the curvature of a bit, make it more straight up and down, bend it back a little bit, and it will hold its shape. The New York Toy Collective dildos also all do that. Those are dual density. They're very representational. They come in natural tones or skin tones. And then there's one from Strap On Me that is really nice. It can go straight up and down, go like that, go like that. If somebody has an inverted uterus, you will need to go backwards. Dildos like this are great for people either with outside the standard anatomy. So I was trying to figure out like the best way to say that. Sorry, I don't want to offend anyone. Nobody is responsible for you know, we all have bodies. They come the way they come. But also, more importantly, somebody may or may not want G-spot stimulation. You may or may not find that having more curve, especially for front hole play, will create more friction every time you're stroking in and out. And that might be great for someone. If you're engaging in back hole penetration, somebody is not that interested in P-spot, straight up and down might be a lot easier. It just depends on your anatomy or the person who's receiving's anatomy and how you want that to go. Again, if you want to do G-spot or P-spot stimulation, you will need a little bit of a curve. So if it's a posable dildo with a shape memory, like any of those, this is the large limba. Here, I'll pass those around. So I say this one. The problem with, I didn't say problem. Sometimes folks don't treat our demos like they would treat their own sex toys. So I think she's a little bit worn out. It is worn out. This one is new and fresh out of the package, so it's holding its shape a lot better actually. That one is, it's a little sad when this happens. But sometimes you go to show a customer and you're like, look, it bends and holds its shape, and it just flops back, and you're like, oh no, somebody just overtaxed this poor demo. This is a dual density. The limba flex is a mono density. Again, you can kind of feel the difference. The limba is great because it is firm, because it does have a little bit of a curve at the head already, and then you can change the actual curvature of the whole dildo. That would be a great one for G-spot or P-spot. It's also pretty modest in terms of the girth. In terms of length, if somebody doesn't want a lot of penetration, as in they want shallow penetration, I find that anything shorter than like this size, even this for me is a little bit short, because the shorter a dildo is, the less you can pull out and go in, because anytime you're pulling out, you're probably going to just come out of the person's hole at the risk of being too graphic. Why am I worried about that? But because if you have a short dildo, this stroke length will be so short, you will basically just be on top of the person pounding them. If you want to do that, and or if you're the receiving partner and you like that, that is great. There's just less you can do. Here, I'll come and grab some of those from you so you're not just like holding a stack of dildos. Sorry about that. Thank you for being great. Like even this might be a little bit short for me. Also, I think for beginners, a shorter dildo is just harder to work with. If you have more length, it will just be easier. You can go long and slow strokes, things like that. There are also products, we're after the one I wanted to show you. There's a product called the O-Nut. It's kind of these little stackable rings that you can put on the base of a dildo so that you can only penetrate someone up to a certain point. These little like squishy rings. But it does make it easier if you are the giving partner in terms of technique and what you can do. But if a partner doesn't want deep penetration, you'll still be able to do more. I just find that a longer length is easier to work with, especially if you're a beginner, especially if you're still getting literally the motion of strap-on play down. Some folks really struggle with it, so I've heard. Other people take to it really quickly. Again, it's just kind of how your body's programmed, what you're used to. If you've watched a lot of porn and imagined yourself as being that person who's the giving partner, then maybe it's kind of in your brain. If you are a dancer and you're used to doing hip isolations, it's gonna come to you a lot more naturally. If you're an equestrian, you've spent your whole life sitting there doing this, learning to like just move from your hip to here like in a saddle and nothing else, it's gonna be easier for you. If you don't have those kinds, if you don't have that kind of muscle memory and you never have, it may be a little bit harder. So don't beat yourself up if you're new to it. Don't freak out. You will get it. Doesn't go great the first time, it's fine. And hopefully, if you are the giving partner and you are new to it, the receiving partner will hopefully have some feedback that they can give you about what's going right and what's going wrong. And if you are the receiving partner in the middle of sex, if you like something, tell them to keep doing that. If you're not liking something, you can tell someone to kind of change it up. But I'm not sure that's the time for like critical feedback in the middle of play. I would save that to like the end of the session when you're, snuggling and doing aftercare or whatever version you have for aftercare. That's the time to either ask questions as the giving partner and say like, hey, I tried this. Did you feel anything? Was it different? Did you like it? Was it cool? I couldn't tell. And or as the receiving partner, be like, hey, when you did that thing, it was great. Or like, hey, I saw you were trying to do this and it was just not for me. And it's also important to keep in mind that not all of your partners are going to be the same. Just because one receiving partner liked something doesn't mean another person will. Reading someone's body language, their verbal cues is really important. If someone's voice is going up and it's starting to get like this, that probably means they're into it. But it may not. That could also be an indicator of like, I'm in pain and I'm not so into this. So you need to pay attention, if you are the giving partner, to the receiving partner. And by the same token, as the receiving partner, you need to pay attention to what's happening in your body. Okay, so I also want to talk a little bit about vibrating dildos. There's not a ton of them on the market, but there are more than there used to be. We actually have a pretty good selection. There's a whole line called the Pegasus line. They're all called pegs. They're marketed for pegging, but that does not mean you can't use it for any kind of strap-on play. They are all motorized. They all come with a little remote. They all have a harness, and they're all about $100. Maybe to go up to $120 for the bigger one. I'm blanking a little bit on the price point, but it's kind of in that range. So all in for a vibrating dildo is pretty good. Then there's an item like the Versa, which actually is a bullet. A lot of vibrating dildos, I'm not going to try to pull it out because I'm still going to get it in there, but I just did this. I hate when that happens. So this one is actually very strong. That's the lowest setting. But what you can do is say this is the Fun Factory Nose. I'm not gonna pass this one around just because we just pulled it out of the package and it's not charged up. So I can't show you what I want to show you about this. But if you have a dildo you love, but it doesn't vibrate, and you want the giving partner to put it on and you want to be a vibrating dildo tonight, you can take a vibrating cock ring and put it around the base of a dildo. And silicone is actually an excellent conductor. We were doing some experiments earlier. It turns out that monodensity dildos conduct the vibration a little bit better. There we go. So you can basically turn any dildo into a vibrating dildo for a night if you have a vibrating cock ring with a nice strong motor. It's not going to be as powerful as kind of like a hollow dildo like that one with a bullet in it, or just a motorized vibrating dildo. But if it's something like, I love this Vixen dildo, and Vixen does not make, you can make 2 vibrating dildos, but say it's one of the ones that doesn't vibrate. You're like, I really want to vibrate, I want to vibrate tonight. If you have a cock ring with a pretty good motor, you can put it on the base of the dildo and it will vibrate. As I try touching it like at the top of the head, you'll kind of see how much it conducts or doesn't conduct. But I think because the dual density ones are really soft, where you're like, I've had enough of this. Here, I'll use from you. You're like, I've had enough, please take this away. Oh no, I just lost my train of thought. Anyways, you can turn a dildo into a vibrating dildo if you have a good cock ring. This one is fun too, because it has these two little ears that have nice stimulation. You can honestly even just like put it around your fingers and like stimulate your clitoris. You can probably hold it like this way against the perineum. You can do a lot of things with a cock ring. It doesn't just have to be a thing that goes on a bio penis. Okay, I think I hit everything. Oh, suction and non-suction cup base. Forgot about that. Suction cup bases are nice because especially then if you want to use it for solo play, you can stick it to the tile wall in your bathroom, you can stick it to the hardwood floor, you can stick it to some sort of flat surface, and use it for solo play. You're not going to be able to do that as much with something with a flat base, but honestly you can always buy a double-sided suction cup. It's really not the end of the world. It is a selling point for some folks. Another thing to keep in mind though is that if it has like a really floppy suction base, I don't think, oh, this one's kind of a floppy suction base because the material is really soft. You will need there's an O-ring that Sport Sheets makes, and it's basically like a little neoprene or foam ring, and you put it on the base of the dildo so that it will not pull through the O-ring in your harness, because otherwise it will come out. Trust me, it's happened, it's embarrassing, and you're just like, why am I such a noob and I didn't know this? So really, I know this is a long way of saying, but it's really all about personal preference and what you're comfortable with and what a partner is comfortable with. If someone is or isn't interested in a representational item, I think it's okay to ask them why. I think it's also okay for that person to say that they just don't, and that's the whole answer. If it's something you want to talk about, I think that's valid. But, you know, if you are the receiving partner, it's nice to be able to provide your own dildos, because then you're not relying on the giving partner to just have what you want. Especially if you want something that's maybe a little bit unusual. You should probably be prepared to provide your own dildo. I am very much of a, if you're the receiving partner, BYOD, bring your own dildo. If you're the giving partner, bring your own harness, BYOH, which is not as good of an acronym. But sometimes that's not the case. If you're able to, and you are either person, having the other kind of equipment, even if you're not switch or verse, is going to be good. Because then if somebody comes over and it's a little bit impromptu, you can still engage and play. Otherwise, you might just have to use equipment that you're not in love with and, you know, either suck it up because you want to do this with this person, or bring your own stuff, or have your own stuff to provide. But I also understand that's an investment. Okay, so other things, alternative kinds of harnesses. Sorry, I'm sorry you keep being the person who ends up with like this handful of dicks. There are worse things to end up with a handful of. So alternative harnesses. Thigh harnesses are super dope. They're really fun, especially if you're into like DS play, any kind of mind fuckery. It can be really fun to have someone think that you're gonna fuck them with a strap on in the classic sense, but then you kind of turn the tables on them and it's a thigh harness, or it's a chin harness. We sell one called the Lickety Split from Stockroom. You might still have this leather one in the picture there. That's the buckling thigh harness from Aslan. We also sell the Ultra Thigh strap-on. We sell the Malibu from Stockroom, which is a fabric option. Thigh harnesses are aplenty. There's also hand harnesses. I think we still have some. I've seen some really cool hand harnesses. There are ones that are meant to go around a boot. We have a chest harness somewhere over here that has an O-ring here. There. But anyways, there are a lot of cool and interesting different things. Lots of different kinds of harnesses. Sometimes I've seen something that was marketed as a thigh harness that was literally just a metal O-ring with a black strap. Honestly, you could put that anywhere on your body that the strap will go around. Like, you could make your own. You could get like a metal ring or O-rings, get some seatbelt material, and make it. So there's lots of fun, cool, different ways to engage in strap-on play. It doesn't just have to be kind of like classic strap-on play. Lube. Lube is going to be like probably one of the most important things. I really like the Sutil Rich. This Liquid Sassy is very popular. And then This is one of the pure anal lubes. These are all water-based lubes. If you are using silicone toys, do not use silicone lube. And if you're really insistent on using a hybrid lube, I recommend you spot check it on the base of the toy. There is a specific reason that silicone and silicone do not play well together. When liquid uncured silicone comes into contact with what's called platinum cured silicone or solid state silicone, it won't necessarily, but it can start the chemical reaction again where it starts trying to liquefy this back into that. You do not want that. You do not want your toy peeling off inside you. Also, silicone lube you cannot use with any porous materials. That will just like melt. I'm not even gonna go into that. I got a horror story call from a customer like a year and a half ago, and it was like, basically it was like, you just need to go to the ER now. You should put down the phone and go to the ER. And it was someone who had been specifically advised not to do that. But I'm telling you now, silicone and silicone don't play well together. If you have a squirting dildo, you can use hybrid lube as a kind of cum lube. I still get like a little bit squicked out about that because I'm very nervous about material interactions and compatibility. The last thing I want is for a toy to start breaking down or have something going wrong and end up inside someone. That's just like no good. System Joe came out with a hybrid lube that has a kind of like creamy, milky looking texture, but it's an oil-water combo. Oil-based lube does play well with silicone, but water-based is going to be the most universal. It's compatible with all toy materials. The only thing to keep in mind is that a lot of water-based lubes still do have glycerin in them. Glycerin, generally speaking, is not considered a vagina-friendly, front-hole-friendly ingredient. So if you are going to purchase an item that has glycerin in it, some people say that plant-derived glycerin is fine for vaginal use, some people don't. The jury seems to be a little bit out on that based on my research. I would say to just kind of sort of steer clear of glycerin if you're going to do front hole play on someone. For anal play, there doesn't seem to be any sort of issue, so totally go for it. But you do want I would say a much thicker consistency. Like personally, I don't usually like a thick consistency lube, but when you're playing with toys, it is great. A material like this, which is super slick, these are all silicone, but I'm sure as you could tell when I pass them around, some of them were really smooth, had like virtually no friction, no drag. This is going to be an item like that. And then I'm trying to think of one of the other ones I passed around. Even like this, a lot of the dual densities will have a little bit more drag to them. That can be great because it creates a little bit more of a realistic friction feeling, especially for front hole play. For back hole play, you might not want that. You might want something that's super smooth, gonna glide super well. In any case, a thicker lube will adhere to a toy better. I really love thin lubes for other kinds of play, like especially the Sutil, the classic one is great. But if you try to pour a very thin lube over a dildo, it will literally just like slide off and pool around the bottom. Even a dildo that has a little bit of drag to the material. So I would say that it's always good to do like a test before you're gonna do play, because nobody wants to be like squirting lube on a dildo and it's literally just like running off onto your bed sheets and you're like, oh no. The only thing about thicker lube is that it can get a little bit sticky. So if you're like, you don't want to have this stuff all over my hands, some wipes by the bed are a nice option. I would strongly, strongly recommend though that even for anal play that doesn't involve toys, you're going to want something thicker because you will not have to reapply as often. If you are doing front hole play on either a trans femme person or someone who's trans masc on T, you will probably need to reapply more. That's because certain orifices do not self-lubricate. The butt doesn't self-lubricate. My understanding from trans femmes who I know and I'm close with is that they also need more help with lubrication, as do trans masc people. Sometimes, not all the time, not everyone. It depends on the dose of tea that they're on, how long they've been on it, but some people can experience vaginal atrophy and reduced lubrication. If somebody's telling you to reapply, or if you're feeling like there's resistance, and there wasn't a couple minutes ago, when you're going in and out, or you, the receiving partner, are feeling like there's an excessive amount of friction, voice that you need more lube. The giving partner might not know because they're not in your body. Hopefully they will notice if there's suddenly an increased amount of resistance and drag, but that's not always an indicator of lack of lubrication. If someone is having muscle contractions because they're orgasming, that will create more resistance and force the dildo out. So it's kind of good to check in. If you're looking down though and it looks like the toy is really dry, that's a good time to reapply. But as the receiving partner, that's also kind of on you to give that feedback to the giving partner that you need more lube. There's no shame in that, there's no problem with it. This is part of why I say don't splurge on, or do splurge on your lube. It's going in your body, as are these toys. Personally, I think that's very important. I try to impress that on our customers. It's important to think about what we put in our bodies. And again, I smoke cigarettes and I know that that's bad to put in my body. I'm very picky about my lube and I'm like, oh no, there's cosmetic additives in that. I can't have that. And I like go outside and so, you know, we all have our things, I know, but please take your lube seriously. Be generous with how much you use. Don't be stingy, because if you are stingy, it can lead to tearing, either vaginally or anally. It's a bit more of an issue with anal play, I would say, tearing. You really don't want to tear someone. You also don't want to experience tearing, especially anal tearing. It will take not just days or weeks, but it can take months to heal. Even micro fissures will take like a couple weeks to heal. Because the problem is, every time you have a bowel movement, those muscles are stretching, it's reopening, and it takes such a long time to heal. As someone who has been torn, it is not fun, it is painful, and if it wasn't a good experience to begin with, every time you sit down on the toilet, it's a reminder of that bad experience, and it feels bad in your body too, and it hurts. So please, 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 do not be stingy about your lube. Do not be weird about asking for it. Because if you do tear, then you can't play for quite a while. Like, you need to heal, and that's kind of a bummer. Okay, so now on to some more fun things. I know lube is not as fun to talk about, but I want to talk about some other kind of fun add-on toys you can use. Here's the one. So this is a finger vibrator, which is very cool. If you are the giving or receiving partner, you can use this to stimulate the perineum. You can also use it to stimulate the clit. Lots of options. Same with a wand. I really like wands during strap-on play as the receiving partner. I know that some folks are really averse to these. I tried to pick a little one that's very lightweight and hopefully not super intimidating. I know they look like a microphone, but they're designed this way for a reason. It's because they have a bunch of flat surface area here, which if you are trying to hit a very targeted spot, like the clitoris or any other kind of small area, you have a much better chance of trying to hit that with this than with the tiny point of a bullet. There's nothing wrong with using this item to stimulate yourself or someone else during strap-on sex, but if you are dealing with a much smaller amount of surface area, it will just be more difficult. And if usability, ease, and getting to the pleasure point is the goal, something like this will probably work out better. If this is too intimidating for you, which by the way I can totally understand, something like a pebble vibe is going to be good, because then you can kind of turn it on its side for really targeted stimulation, or you can use the large flat surface area. Again, can be used on all kinds of body parts. Comes in multiple colors. Sorry, we just had the pink one out. Something like the Volea is really cool too. This one, again, you can, where's the, sorry, I'm having a moment. This one is cool because, like the cock rings, you can put it around the base of a dildo and it will conduct the vibration pretty well. Whoop, I'm struggling. Anyways, I think you get the point. You can use it the way you would a cock ring. Whoa. Ah! Sorry. You can also use this around nipples. Really good. You can use it as a stroker. So if you are engaging in pegging with someone, or backhoe play and they're a penis owner, you can almost use it like a stroker. Really nice too because it has these fluttery ends for clitoral stimulation. This is like a really good all-arounder toy. I was a little bit dubious of this item when we first got it, but it moves, it stretches, it has kind of a flicking motion. It's actually a really neat item that's really well thought out. The other area that I want to talk a little bit more about are base covers, or some people call them bumpers. As the giving partner, it is super fun to engage in strap-on play. The minus side is that you do not get as much stimulation as the giving partner. So a base cover like this, there's also one, this is the B-Cush. There's also one called the Lippy that is a little bit more anatomical representation of the vagina. There's this kind of saddle shape from Vixen. It's built into the Mustang Royale that I showed you all earlier. They made this base because this was so popular, but this is the only model that comes with it built in, so they made kind of a little base cover in the same shape. There's this one, which is the Alien one. These are also cool because they can be used on their own as grinding pads, especially if they take a bullet and if you want something that vibrates. It's kind of a multi-use item. So if you are a vagina owner, this is kind of a fun item because you can use it solo too. Again, you can put a bullet in it. The Lippy, which looks like this, is very, very stretchy. I was actually able to stretch it around this item because this has a really nice motor. This is one of my favorite toys ever. So that was a real thrill to me. The other kind of, I don't know, there was something in my basket that I think a customer might have grabbed to look at. I might have to run upstairs again. Anyways, the other item you can look at is a strapless strap-on dildo. This is the Share Light from Fun Factory. You will get some stimulation as the wearer from this kind of item because it is curved to essentially stimulate the G-spot, and as you are topping someone, being the giving partner, you will get some motion and some stimulation. There's also a brand called Strap On Me, and I showed this dildo earlier. They make a handful of models that are similar to this, but they're all motorized. They have a motor in the bulb, a motor in the shaft, and a motor in the head, the vibrating ones. There's also one, it has a vibrating motor here, a vibrating motor here against the clitoris, and then one on the shaft. I'm sorry. There's also one that has a suction, so like a clitoral suction piece that goes here for the wearer, vibrates here, vibrates here. They come with remotes. There's also a non-vibrating version, which is bendable and posable, like this one. So you can kind of change the angle a little bit more and the curvature. They're very cool toys, but that's like something that, especially when I was topping a lot, came up for me quite a bit. You can also do the thing of like jamming something like this down the front of your harness. It doesn't work as well. It will kind of get squirrely, it will move around, it will be distracting. So I would say a base cover that vibrates or a strapless strap-on is going to be your best option. Thing to know about strapless strap-ons, oh my God, thank you. This is fantastic, thank you, Ruth. So this is the one I was talking about. I say I won't be able to control all the motors because somebody jacked our remote, but hopefully. So there's a motor here, there's a motor in this part here, which sits against the clitoris. This is the internal piece for the giving partner, and then there's a motor here in the shaft. There is a variation where there's a suction piece here, so it does like what the womanizer toys do. It does this like clitoral stimulation thing that actually is very pleasurable to a lot of people. So I will pass this around. This one does not bend in the shaft because the motor's in there, just so you know. So there's kind of a lot of add-ons you can have, especially as a top if you're just like, I love being the giving partner, but I just don't get that much sensation. There are things to do to remedy that. The thing with strapless strap-ons is that most people cannot use them in a truly strapless way without a harness, just to be perfectly honest. I can, but based on talking to coworkers, friends, things like that, I don't know almost anyone else who can. I think it has to do with my years as an equestrian. I have incredibly strong Kegel muscles, and I think I have a very narrow bone set. They just stay in. For most people, that is not going to be the case. In fact, I would say the majority of people cannot hold those in. It just doesn't work with some folks' anatomy. You could do a million Kegel exercises, and if your bone set's wide enough, you may just never be able to hold one in. Which is why when I talked about the harness, having the open O-ring, you're probably going to need a harness if you want to wear one of those. Which again, totally fine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I've also done it with a harness where I was just like, I just don't want to fuck around with like actually thinking about holding this in. I don't want to work this hard, which I think is totally fine. Sorry, okay. Okay, we talked about toys and accessories. Position aids. Okay. So I was trying to, we're actually going to go on to the next slide. So position aids, sex slings, and sex swings can all be great for strap-on play as well, especially position aids though. When it comes to partner alignment, and when I talk about partner alignment, I mean physical size. If there is a large physical size difference, it doesn't matter who's the giving partner and who's the receiving partner, you will probably have to make some adjustments. There will be some kinds of positions in play you may not be able to do. Like if I'm the giving partner and the receiving partner is 6'2" and 225 pounds, I'm probably not gonna wear a chest harness and let them like fuck me on my chest, because that's probably just not safe. So that is something to think about. If there's a significant height difference, significant even musculature difference, if someone's significantly more fit, less fit, there will just be differences. Like that's just kind of a natural part of sex in general. I feel like this shouldn't have to be talked about, but I do feel like position aids can really help. Height differences, especially when it comes to pegging, if it's a cis hetero situation with pegging, there's a good chance that the receiving partner could be 6'4" and 225 pounds, and the giving partner could be 5'2" and 110 pounds. There are just certain kinds of things that are not going to work as well. It just is. But there are lots of great products, like the Liberator Flip Brand. They also make a wedge, they make lots of cool pillows. Dame makes a pillow as well. The reason position aids are better than regular pillows is regular pillows are just squishy as fuck. Let's be real. You will have to pile up a bunch of them. It will be weird, especially if it's like a down pillow. You get on top of it, it'll be fine, then all of a sudden you're sinking. Position aids are made with these like high density foams so that they are highly resistant to body weight. It doesn't matter if you are 110 pounds or 310 pounds. They're meant to resist. They're meant to be dense, and they will hold up against that. So it will be better. And if you have a regular partner with whom that would be a good investment, I would recommend it. If you are a very tall person, for example, and you are the giving partner, the receiving partner might just need to have their hips elevated more than just being in a regular doggy style position. They might just need help. It's not about anything other than that, except that it makes things a lot more comfortable. There's also a really cool sling that we sell upstairs. It's from a stock room. I think we have, I think the sex sling from Sport Sheets can also be converted to do this, and we might have another one. But it's basically, it has a pad that goes around the back of the neck, and then you can either, as the giving partner, you can put it around your neck and have the receiving partner put their legs through, and that kind of helps elevate the pelvis, but also allows the person to relax backwards. But as the receiving partner as well, you can wear it around your neck and then have your own legs through the straps, and you kind of just hang there. It's almost like being in a sex swing, but not actually being lifted off the ground, but you can kind of relax into the position. It's really great. When you relax, again, things like squirting or prostate milking are easier because your body is physically relaxed. If you are tensed up because you're trying to hold yourself in an unnatural position of some kind, it's not going to be as enjoyable. It will be harder to get off. It will not feel good. You will end your session, all of a sudden you'll relax and you're like, oh my God, why do my shoulders hurt? Why do my hips hurt? It's because you're tensing, because you're trying to stay in a particular position that is not natural, that you may not be conditioned for, you may not have the muscle memory for, you may not have the physicality for, in which case position aids are great. Not everyone is super jacked and can go for like an hour and a half, no problem. Most people can't. I can't. I know some people who can. I'm just like, oh my God, you spend like 12 hours a week in the gym. You can do this. I haven't been in a gym in 5 years. That's not gonna be for me. So I don't know why sometimes people are a little bit like embarrassed about position aids, but honestly, I think they're great. They're also great for solo play. Like the sling I was talking about, I use that for solo play all the time and I love it. It's just a really nice item. It was totally worth the investment. In terms of positions, I think the easiest position for beginners is going to be doggy, regardless of people's gender identity, regardless of your orientation, regardless of who is playing and what arrangement. Doggy, I think, is just going to be the easiest because it's the easiest access. Missionary works too, but for missionary, especially if the receiving partner is on their back with their legs spread, you then, as the giving partner, have to have your legs together, and it is a lot of ab hip flexor workout. That may not work out super well. You will tire out after possibly 5 or 10 minutes. Like, you don't want to burn yourself out too early. So again, if you're still getting used to this, if you're still getting used to the motion, if you're still getting used to just what it feels like, doggy is probably going to be the easiest. It's not the most intimate position to a lot of people, and I understand that, but if you're able to get past that part of it, highly recommend. Basically, any position that you can penetrate someone in, you can do strap-on play in. But again, a lot of it will depend on the physicality of the two people. Their stamina, height difference, musculature difference, things like that. Just be smart, be practical. Please don't let someone like break your jaw because you put on a chin harness and let them, I say, even if it doesn't even matter about how much the person weighs. If they're putting enough force down on you, yes, weight might exacerbate that, but honestly, someone doesn't have to be that big to do a lot of damage. If you are laying on your back with a chin harness, you cannot let someone go like super hard on your chin. They're gonna break your jaw. Just be smart, be practical, and be safe. You can do anything safely and carefully if you are smart about it. If you don't let someone get carried away, if you don't get carried away. So if you are the receiving person and you're riding a harness strapped to someone's chin, think about how fast you are going and how much force you are putting down on that person's face. Does that make sense? Because I'm not trying to be a buzzkill. I'm just trying to be smart, trying to help everybody be smart. Also, there's always going to be like weird things that happen in the bedroom. Sex is awkward. Queefing and farting after strap-on play is super normal. Just think about if you ever every time you're pulling out, if the dildo goes out and then you're forcing it back in, you're forcing little pockets of air in. It's not that the person is a gaseous person, it's that the act of penetration, especially with a strap-on, is going to force air into either the rectal canal or the vaginal canal, and that air has to go somewhere. So once it's withdrawn, it is natural that people will fart and they will queef. It just happens, it's not that big of a deal. If you are the receiving partner, don't feel ashamed. If you're the giving partner, please don't be weird and like make the person feel embarrassed. Bodies are bodies, they just do stuff. On that note, if you're engaging in back hole play, anal play, whatever you want to call it with a strap on, any kind of anal play, there will eventually be messiness. I don't know anyone who's ever engaged in anal play for a significant amount of time who's never encountered messiness. Messiness happens. As the receiving partner, you shouldn't feel ashamed. As the giving partner, again, don't make the person feel worse. They're probably already embarrassed. You know, like, that will not help. I also think that either as the giving or receiving partner, it can be a real turnoff. There is a smell to fecal matter that can like immediately take somebody out of it. If somebody wants to stop and clean up and reset or redouche, if that's their thing, let that happen. Just kind of start the cycle over, or take a little break, or if y'all really need a break and you're like, we don't want to tackle this again, clean yourselves up, go get some lunch, make some dinner, go on a walk. If you're okay to just clean up and go back to it, that's fine too. But mess will happen. It just does. Anal play will result in those kinds of things happening from time to time. If it is a regular problem with a partner, talk to them about taking a dietary supplement. Ask them if they're open to douching if they're not. Vaginal douching is not considered super healthy by our standards today, just because it tends to wipe out the good vaginal flora, so douching is really kind of only about back hole play. Okay, strap-on sex with trans, gender, non-conforming, intersex, non-binary people. We talked about this a little bit, but it's really important that for holes that don't self-lubricate, or holes that used to self-lubricate that maybe don't anymore, that you apply extra lube. Please be nice. Please be nice to your partners. Also, don't make assumptions about what hole somebody wants something in. Like, these are discussions you should be having before you get into this. Everybody has a butt and everybody has a mouth, which is great. But just because someone has two holes doesn't necessarily mean they have a preference. Also, it might mean that they have a strong preference. Just find all of this out. I can't imagine why somebody would jump into strap-on play and not ask which hole they should put it in, if there are multiple holes as options below the belt, but I am sure it's happened. Strap-on play that involves oral can be really fun, especially as a warm-up. Again, just because someone may not be interested in sucking a bio penis doesn't mean they're not interested in sucking a strap-on. I know people who are like, nope, I don't ever want to suck a bio penis ever again in my life. But they're like, yeah, I'll suck a strap-on. Like, I think it's super hot. I think it's really fun. It gets me in the mood. Those that don't make assumptions based on people's gender identity, their bodies, what their preferences are. Just ask. It's honestly a lot easier that way. I think especially with gender non-conforming folks, there can be a lot of dancing around about that. As long as they're comfortable talking about it, that's good. Also, if two people can't have an open and frank conversation about like what things are going in what holes, maybe those two people shouldn't be engaging in those kind of activities. It's my personal belief. If two people cannot come together and talk frankly about it, it might end up being a not so good or not so safe or healthy situation for everyone. That I just think is good general practice, regardless of who and what activities we're talking about. Because if you can't talk about before, chances are things are going to go wrong in the middle, and nobody wants to walk away from an experience feeling bad about what they did to someone else, what was done to them. things get misconstrued, and it can just be a huge bummer. So basically, we're now at the Q&A and trivia part. Do you all want to do Q&A first or trivia and giveaway first? I feel like we should do trivia and giveaway first, so then it's short. All right. Okay, so I hope you all were paying attention. This is too hard. What was the ingredient in lube that I talked about that was maybe not so good for front hole play?
Glycerin.
Oh, no! I should have been like, by the way, you have to raise your hand. If you all shout out, I can't tell you. Does anybody know who said it first, or do I now have to come up with a better, oh no, I have to do a different question. Okay.
I got the buzzers.
Give me a second.
I just heard it from this side, but I didn't see. That was.
I know, I like heard it over here.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna have to raise your hands, because that was too hard for me. So what is the advantage of having a hole in the front of your harness? Yes, okay.
Variety of toys, like the easier to slide in, bigger toys. You can use the
Strapless drum.
strapless drum. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right, after we finish the class, I'll go grab your free gift from the back. Congratulations! You have won the LimbaFlex Medium. Yay! Okay. Are there questions? Okay, I say I'll sort of just.
Oh, mine was
What's up?
do you have any examples of which one's like the thicker lube and then the like lighter
Yeah,
lube?
yeah. We also have, for a long time, we didn't because of the pandemic, which was a huge bummer. We didn't have our testers out, but now we do. This is the CTO Rich. I really like this one. It is really thick. It's a little bit sticky because of this horny goat-weed additive. But honestly, a lot of the thicker water-based lubes are a little bit sticky. I really like this one. It's a biodegradable packaging. It just like, it doesn't have any weird cosmetic additives. When I say cosmetic additives, what I literally mean is, especially if you're a femme person, if you've ever bought liquid foundation, if you look at those ingredients and especially a lot of silicone hybrid lubes, you'll notice that there's a lot of overlap. Just because something's okay to put on your face doesn't mean it's okay to put on your body. Generally, I tend to think if you wouldn't put it in your mouth and swallow it, you probably shouldn't put it in your face. Again, that's just like a personal thing. I'm very weird about certain additives, but I know that's like, I'm on Lonely Island. But yeah, the Sassy is a thicker one. So is the Pure. The Pure lubes all do have glycerin in them. I think almost all of them do. Maybe, I think a couple of the thinner texture ones that are meant for AFAB people doing front hole penetration don't, but those are gonna kind of slide off the toy. We have these little tags that have like some viscosity ratings and stuff like that, but mostly you can ask the staff if you say like I'm looking for a thicker water-based lube, we can help you out.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes.
I have a couple questions. One is, I think someone told me you're not supposed to use like coconut oil with silicone dildos. Is that true, or?
You can use oil-based lubes with silicone dildos. I have heard from some people it's not a great idea. However, coconut oil is actually a bad idea because it has natural sugars in it. You don't really want to put anything, like you can use a flavored lube if it's sugar-free, or doesn't have glucose or sucralose in it, in the front hole, but you really don't want to put anything that might have sugar in a front hole because it will lead to a yeast infection.
Oh,
just to be really frank.
So,
Like,
so even if okay, so no front hole, coconut oil, massages, and
I say, yeah, I would say steer clear of coconut oil. There are some oil-based lubes that are vagina friendly. A lot of them are not.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Especially some of the more like creamy masturbation cream oil-based ones. Most of those are not front hole friendly.
Okay.
So I would say avoid. Any other questions?
Yeah.
I say you said you had a couple. That's why I was
Yeah,
like, I feel like
sorry.
there's a couple.
So I was like recently with someone, and I actually have one of those, that sort of like multicolored one in the back. Yeah, I have that, and something that looks kind of like that leather one. So I was using those together, and it was fun, but like I felt like it kept having to like hold it in place because it felt like it was kind of or something, or just like I don't know if like
You might have.
what do
Was
you think
the
I was doing
O-ring
wrong?
kind of loose?
I don't think so because it was like snapped on.
Okay.
I don't.
The other reason why I like these, and I've seen other harnesses where like the snaps are hidden underneath on an aesthetic level, it's nice, but it's actually really hard to change them out. So this is actually not how you're supposed to put a dildo in. I say if you're doing it like this, that could be part of the reason why.
Oh, I wasn't.
Okay.
I just put it from the.
I say it needs to go all the way. From
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
Okay, because I was gonna say if you're trying to put it between the base plate and the O-ring, it will pull
Yeah.
out. Okay.
Do you think it just wasn't tight enough or something, or like? I don't
When you
know,
say
like,
it didn't feel secured, like, did you mean like the harness was gonna come off, or you felt like the dildo was gonna
just
come
felt
out?
like it was like kind of all just going
Because
everywhere.
this base is a little bit floppy.
Oh,
Like it's a
okay.
little bit.
Yeah.
You might have come in after I talked about this. They make these, they're not O-rings, but they're like these little neoprene foam rings. Bare Parts makes them. They come in two sizes based on the diameter of your dildo. You can make the small or the large. If you put that around the base, it creates like a little, and they're like about yay big. It'll keep it from pulling through the O-ring.
Oh, cool.
Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yeah, thank you.
I said also maybe your O-ring was a little bit big.
Maybe.
If you need more O-rings, you can buy them in a store like this. You can also go to the hardware store.
Yeah.
Just know what the diameter at the base of your dildo is.
Okay.
You should be able to find that out pretty easily somewhere online. You could also just measure the circumference, then divide by pi, and that's your diameter, 3.14. And then you can just buy an O-ring that will be very close to that. You do need a little bit of wiggle room so that you can get these straps in, so you don't, like, if it is tight around the dildo, like, it might be a little hard to get the little strappy bits. But besides that,
Do your research on this. This
Okay.
is take 3 capsules.
I think doing one or some of those things should probably help.
Thank you.
This is 19. The positioners, they have a removable cover usually, or?
Yeah. A lot of, especially the Liberator ones, they're like a super dense foam, and then they have like a water-resistant cover, like a splash-proof cover that goes over that, and then over that there's like sort of this like velvety cover, and yes, you can remove both. You don't really need to remove the splash-proof cover from the foam, though you can, take the velvety, nice fabric cover off and then kind of clean it so that if you do have a partner who squirts or someone, there's semen that's going through the fabric, you can still clean it, and then you can throw the actual cover. Keep pointing at the slide that's not on the screen. You can throw the cover in the wash. The other thing that's really nice for not just strap-on play, but a good investment if you engage in water sports, if you have a partner who squirts, if you squirt. There are a couple fluid-proof blankets that we sell. We sell 2 from Liberator, like a full-size one that will basically cover a whole bed, and a smaller one. And then we also have a blanket called the Layer. Those are all really great. The Layer is circular, which is a little bit odd, but it's very small and it folds up really well. So if you want to take it on the go, that's like the best one. The Liberator small one's good for that too. The Liberator full-size one is very bulky once it's folded up. So like if you're going to your girlfriend, boyfriend, partner's house, like yeah, sure, and you have an overnight bag, bring it along. But if it's just kind of like you're trying to be discreet and like the stuff in a little backpack or a little tote or something, a full-size blanket might be a little bit hard. But sorry, I hope that answered your question. But yeah, and I think the Dame pillow has a fluid-proof cover underneath the fabric cover, but I'm not sure. I am sure about the Liberators because I own like
Also, there's water-based, and then what was it, silicone-based?
yeah, and then there's hybrid, which are a mix of the two.
Is silicone bad for front pet?
Silicone, if you're using a material it's compatible with, which
Like I'm using a glass toilet.
yeah, I say, silicone is technically okay for both front hole and back hole. There are certain ingredients that I find a little bit scary for me for front hole, but there are a lot of people who disagree with me. Like, you know, there's no hard and fast rules. Silicone is definitely like the gold standard for anal play. Like, people love it. It's very thin. The only thing about silicone lube that kind of sucks is that it will stain your sheets. The only one that's non-staining is Uber lube. But yeah, like water-based lube is not going to stain your sheets. It's water-based, like you'll wash them and it'll come out and it'll be fine. But silicone lube will stain. Ooh. Sorry, I thought I was going to sneeze. But yeah. I feel like I'm going to have another one. Just, yeah, so I mean.
Okay. Yeah.
Also oil-based lube, like the more lotiony kinds, like the boy butter. Oh my god, sorry. I had a horrible allergy attack this morning. I thought it was over. Yeah, like boy butter is really popular for backdoor stuff. Not front hole friendly. The boy butter ones are not. Masturbation creams that are like thicker and oil-based are also pretty popular. You know,
Okay.
things in that family. Any other questions? Okay, cool. You're welcome. Thank you all for coming. Hope you had a good time. Oh.